What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Monday. I'm sorry it's Monday. I apologize. I didn't make Monday happen. But welcome to the Monday Build Show. I am your host over here at the Empower Gaming Studio. Hola. We're going to be building a PC for one PC for Peyton. I almost said Peyton Manning. Love the name, by the way. So we're going to be building a PC today. They actually went on the website and they purchased the Gladiator along with an upgrade, storage upgrades. They have a 2 terabyte SSD from the 1 terabyte SSD that is normally included with this build. They also included or purchased a Mafati keyboard, mouse, and a 24-inch 1080p gaming monitor bundle. So the whole setup is coming with this build. We have everything else here. Now we just need to build the system and get it going. So looking forward to getting this one built for you, Peyton. I hope you enjoyed the stream. And if you are watching, feel free to ask any questions during the stream on any of the platforms. I have all of them up, so I should be able to chat with you, or I should be able to see your comments. But all right, let's go ahead and run through the build order, or the build list, the loadout, so to speak. And let's see what we're working with today. So, if you're not familiar with the Gladiator series, you, hey homie, what's up? I checked out your videos like you are new in Kick streaming. Oh, thanks. I guess I need to get a moderator over there on Kick as well. I am not interested, sir. I appreciate you, but not interested. Thank you. So, let's go ahead and run through the build out here. Like I was saying, if you're not familiar with the Gladiator or the X1 Gamer, for that matter. Actually, I was wrong. This is the X1 Gamer. My mistake. But it's very similar to the Gladiator setup, the Tier 1. So this has a AMD Ryzen 5 CPU, which is an AMD Ryzen 5 4500. It's got 6 cores, 12 threads. Everybody makes a Peyton Manning joke. Well, Peyton Manning was my #1 quarterback in fantasy football when I was really big into fantasy football back when he was playing. So he's like my overall all-time favorite quarterback. Sorry. I can't help myself but to say something about the name. I have a lot of generic jokes as well when people meet me. Like, how have you been, Ben? You know, because I'm Ben. My name's Ben. But, so I get that a lot too. It's stuff like that. But the Ryzen 5 4500's got 6 cores, 12 threads, max boost of 4.1 gigahertz. That's this guy over here, the Ryzen box. And then we're going to be cooling it with an AMD Wraith Stealth cooler. But actually, we really don't do that anymore, so we did grab a Assassin X120R SE by Thermalright. It's a tower air cooler with 4 heat pipes and a 120mm PWM addressable RGB fan. So it's a great cooler for the Ryzen 5. It can cool a Ryzen 7, but once you start getting to the 7, you'll probably want to upgrade to the Thermalright Peerless Assassin just to get a little bit better performance. Hey, what's up? Beetle Streaking Bro, same motherboard. But I have Ryzen 5 5500. Yes. Yeah, the 5500 and the 4500, they're really close in performance, honestly. They're basically the same CPU. If you wanted to take it one step further, I'd say the Ryzen 5 3600 is actually better than both of those because it has the PCIe 4.0 support. Versus the 5500 and the 4500 that does not. So it really doesn't matter if we're on a B450 or a B550 for this CPU or the 5500 because this board doesn't support PCIe 4.0 either. It's the B550 at that point. So if you go Ryzen 5 3600, you should try to get to that 3600. Is the music too loud, guys? I feel like it's a little bit. I never know. I'm not very good at it. Anyway, motherboard B450 Wi-Fi micro ATX motherboard, which is what we were just talking about here. This is a great board because it has the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth built into it, has all your features, has 2 extra slots for additional RAM if Peyton wants to add more RAM to the system later. All he has to do is buy the exact same kit and add the two sticks to the slots, and he's doubled his RAM. So it makes upgrades very easy, as well as this board can support any of the AMD Ryzen CPUs from 5,000 all the way back to 3,000 or even 2,000, even the first gen. So it has a wide range of support, so he could literally put almost any CPU, AMD CPU in here, Ryzen, except for the newest 7000 series, which it does not support. You know, there's some CPUs that I would recommend not putting on here. I would recommend a better board for it, but overall, huge upgrade, angle there. And then we got the 16 gigabytes. It was supposed to be the Silicon Power, but we did go with T-Force Vulcan Z because it was not in stock. So we went with a better set overall because this has a better heat spreader on it, which is the only thing that makes it better. So it's got better cooling for the RAM itself. But this is 3200 megahertz CL16, 2 8 gig sticks total. And that's the Vulcan Z by Team Group T-Force series. The SSD, like I mentioned earlier, originally this rig will come with a 512. They upgraded from that, or 1 terabyte or 512. I can't remember off the website. But they did upgrade to a 2 terabyte M.2 NVMe. So we've got a Gen 3 SSD here. Got 2 terabytes of storage, so he'll be able to install a ton of different games there and really get to enjoy the system without having to uninstall and reinstall games, etc. So it really helps it out. The power supply is a 500 watt 80 plus bronze, which is this guy. That's going to be powering the entire system. And then the graphics card is an AMD RX 580 8 gigabyte. And this is the XFX GTS model. It's been around for a long time. It's a great card still today, and it'll literally play pretty much any game you still throw at it. It'll run it. So it's a great card to start out with if you are looking to build an entire system for, you know, a really good price. This is a great card to start with, and then you can always upgrade later. So, great card, great system, and I'm excited to see the system set up at your desk. Hopefully you guys take some pictures and send them back to me. Well, let's get started. Nothing really else to do except for build it now. I didn't really touch on the case. The case is by Montech, but it's Inland brand / rebranded to Inland, and it's the Montech X1. If you're not familiar with that, it has 4 RGB LED fans on the front and 1 on the rear. Those are 120 millimeter. It has a mesh front, glass side panel. It's a really nice entry-level case to start with. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and move the power supply and the graphics card out of the way. And then we're going to get started with the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM, and the SSD, and then we'll mount the cooler onto the CPU itself. So let's go ahead and get started with the motherboard. Hey, what's up, Army Vet? Welcome back to the Build Show, sir. And how are you doing this evening? I'm actually going to grab a different board. This one is not the right one. I think I grabbed the wrong one off the shelf. Hold on. Yep, it's just all the boxes look the same. I think that was one of my test boards. Sorry. But this is the new board. It has everything in it that we need. So how are you doing, Army Vet? How's everybody doing on this Monday evening? Left my camera controls over. There we go. Doing well. Awesome. How's that northern weather? Doing better? Sure it's warmed up by now. Since the last time we really talked about the weather, it was still kind of snowing up there. Down here it's definitely hot AF. Excuse my French. I think that's like Gen X French. I agree. With Garfield, when it comes to Mondays, yes. Mondays are terrible. Who likes Mondays? Here's our Ryzen 5 4500 that we're going to be installing into the AM4 socket on the motherboard here. And all we really got to do is lift this metal hammer up. I call it a hammer. It's not really a hammer. It doesn't really hammer anything. And then what we're looking for is on the back of this, you'll see a gold triangle here on the corner. We need to match that gold triangle to the triangle here on the socket, which is normally or typically the top left. And you always have to be careful because there's a ton of different, a ton of small pins on the bottom of that CPU. So you always have to be careful when you install it. AMD has since now moved over to LGA. This is called PGA, where the pins are on the CPU. LGA is where the pins are on the motherboard. Intel has been a big fan of pins on the motherboard since, gosh, Pentium 3, I think. Back when Pentium 4 was a thing. They switched to LGA. Just waiting on the rain to start. I know. We've got that hurricane rain coming too, or something. Right? But there we go. We've got our CPU installed. Now, now we could go ahead and get the RAM installed, which is 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 CL16 by Team Group, the T-Force Vulcan Z. These go for about $34 right now on Amazon. If you ever wanted to upgrade, that's about the price you'll pay for an additional kit, which would get you from 16 gigs, 32 gigs, which is a nice little upgrade you could do, which is we're going to be dropping these into slots A2 and B2. There we go. And really all you got to do is move the little clip out on both the bottom and the top. Line it up with the slot, because there's only one way you could install it. It's keyed, so you can only put it in one way, the right way. Unless you try to really force it, which would cause physical damage. You don't want to do that. After you line it up, just push straight down on it, and it will lock in. These little tabs will lock in. And then you know, once you hear that click, that it's been installed. So that's one thing you could do to add a little bit of upgrade to it. Next up is our 2TB M.2 NVMe SSD. That's 2 terabytes of storage. Go ahead and remove which does come pre-installed on this board typically. Not all boards will have this pre-installed there. We just line it up, push it in the slot, and then add the screw, and then the SSD is now installed. So that was quite simple. Next up is the cooler, which is the 120 millimeter fan, Thermalright Assassin X120R SE. It's got 4 heat pipes and the 120 fan, which is addressable RGB. Super cool looking fan. It'll do a great job with this particular setup. I don't know why it hasn't focused. Come on. There we go. Sometimes it does that when I put a big box in front, and then it's like, ah! It just freaks out. Now, just got my MSI B550. Nice. Nice, nice. Yeah, that thing is a pretty good board. I've always liked the B550 Pro. Now I have to gather up the gumption to tear it apart, tear the system down, and install the new one. It's not that bad. The only thing you really got to be careful of is when you remove the cooler off the CPU. Just be mindful. Sometimes, and a lot of times actually with AM4, the CPU likes to stick to the bottom of the cooler, so just be mindful of that. I think that happened to you when you added the liquid AIO, if I remember correctly. But it happens a lot with AM4. We're going to go ahead and get started by removing these screws on the plastic mounting brackets, I guess we can call them, that come with the motherboard here. We're going to remove those because we aren't going to use those. We're going to use the mounting brackets that come with the cooler. We are, however, going to use that plate which is included with the cooler. Now I have my microphone in front of my face, sorry. We'll remove those, and then we'll get the hardware out for the cooler. And we'll get the right hardware here added and installed for socket AM4. There are these little red pegs. They're plastic. I'll just go right there. And we have 4 screws and 2 brackets to add. And these brackets, I've done a million of these, so I don't really have to look at the instructions, but this cooler does have instructions, which will be in your box if you ever need to reference it, or you can come back and look at the video, and you can always reference it here. But we just want to make sure we're putting the cooler on the right way, which is this way. We'll screw these brackets in through the pegs and onto the back plate, which is on the back side of the motherboard there, receiving the screws. And there we go. We got our brackets installed, ready for the cooler. So always remember to peel this little piece of plastic off the bottom of your cooler, because if you don't, it is going to interfere with the cooling performance. In fact, most of the time it will not allow it to cool at all. A little thin piece of plastic can wreak some havoc. Before we apply our thermal paste, before we install our cooler, we're going to apply our thermal paste, which usually I just do an X. The most important part with AMD is on the bottom side, because that's the hot spot of the CPU generally, and then I like to just add a couple dots here and there. That'll do. So now we are ready to apply our cooler to the top of the CPU. Which we'll just screw into the brackets we installed. Need my longer forever, so I don't get my knuckles chewed up on the pins of the cooler. And then we'll try to distribute the pressure as we tighten them by going back and forth, as it's pushing pressure down on the CPU and pushing the pins into the socket. There we go. Good enough. Now we can add the fan, which is this guy, to the side of the cooler. This is 120 millimeters, and it's addressable RGB and PWM, and I think it goes all the way up to about 1500 RPMs, the fan speed. Give or take. More than enough fan to cool this cooler. You could always add a second fan to this thing too, if you wanted to do a push-pull type configuration. You could do that. And we're just going to add the mounting clips. And these clips literally just grab the side of the cooler, and that's how it holds on. There we go. Cooler has been installed. Now we just need to plug in our PWM connection for the fan speed to the CPU fan header. And then this addressable RGB connection will also need to be plugged in here. We're just going to go to this RGB rainbow header top. Then we just need to zip tie these, clean it up a little bit, clean. right? We don't want, you know, dirty cables. We want it nice and clean. Actually, I could have just gone back and underneath the cooler there, but we're already here. Didn't think about that until just now. Zip ties are cheap. There we go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put this cooler tuck it away. That way, if you ever had to access that again or remove the cooler, you can easily do so without yanking on the cables. There we are. We've got our cooler installed, our RAM installed, our SSD installed, and our CPU underneath the cooler. We're ready to get the case out. Let's go ahead and zoom out and get that case. What's the specs? Hey, what's up, Carl Jake? So this is a Ryzen 5 4500, 16 gigabyte DDR4 3200, CL16 2 terabyte SSD with a 500 watt power supply, 80 plus bronze, and a RX 580 for the graphics card, with a B450 DS3H Wi-Fi by Gigabyte motherboard, micro ATX, and we also have what was this? Thermalright Assassin X120 for the cooler, which we already installed. All of that, we're just now getting the case out. That way we can get the motherboard installed. And then this case is by Montech. It's the Montech X1. I'm just going to feed some of these cables to the back. We don't want any of these front panel cables running through the front. I want them running to the back. They're out of the way, not in the way. Somebody has to remind me to remove this song from the I meant to remove it several times now. Keep forgetting. Doesn't seem like it fits. What's the graphics card? RX 5. We build super high-end, super low-end, entry-level budgets, all sorts of budget gaming PCs for people. So it all really depends on, you know, where you want to go with your build. So it's up and down everywhere. We don't discriminate with the budget entry level builds. A build is a build. As long as you're happy with it and it does what you need it to do. And then the other thing is always easy to upgrade. Go. All right, so I think we're ready to put in our back panel for our I/O shield, whatever you want to call this thing. Basically, this closes up the gap on the back of the motherboard so that around the USB ports, it's just closed up. It's rid of the gap. And installed. Then I think we do have to move one stud and then add one. Oh no, this one stays. See it? I'm special. We just need to add two. Alright, now we're ready for the board to come in. Drop this into place here, wind up, and then use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to mount the board to the case. Pop these off because that's where the graphics card is going to end up. Need those there. And we can start plugging in our front panel I/O So everything here on our front panel, our power button, reset button, our HD audios for your microphone and headset, USB 2.0 and USB 3.0. All of these need to get plugged into the motherboard in order to work. So that's what all of these cables are, or most of them, are on the back. So these guys here. We already know where our USB 3.0 is. So pretty much everything's just going to go through the side here, and then we'll zip tie it up nice and neat. Just by design with this case, particular case. Run those through, flip it over, and we'll get all these plugged in. First off, we're going to plug in our front panel power button, reset button, and our HD LEDs and our power LEDs, which indicates a light that indicates that it's powered on, etc. All of these need to be plugged into the motherboard in order to power on, restart, and indicate that the system is on. They all have individual pins, which if you ever have a question on this, you can always look up your motherboard manual and take a look. It's also laid out on the motherboard if you have really good eyes and you can see very, very fine detail like that. Or if you're old like me and have readers, like I do, then you definitely see it from here. So that's why I wear readers when I'm building, because of all the small print. Because I'm old. Getting old. HD audio and our USB 2.0. That last one that I just did was USB 3.0. USB 2.0. These all really only can be plugged in one way. You really can't do it wrong. They're all keyed so that it can only be plugged in one way. And they're labeled on the board. So you really can't mess up. Unless you push really hard, then maybe. Then maybe there is a chance. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is split this down so it's separated. That way it looks a little nicer through the inside. And we'll grab all of these and zip them up. Go. And we'll do one more here. Keep it nice looking, you know. And we'll flip it around. And we'll do probably another one here as well. Probably another one here. There we go. Then when we get the power supply in here, we'll finish cleaning that up. So I'm not too worried about that. That way it looks a lot cleaner than a big bundled mess. Which, talking about the power supply, we could probably move on to that right now. We'll go ahead and stand the system up because we're going to be inserting the power supply from the back side here. So let's go ahead and get that out and installed. Monday nights are usually a quiet night for streaming. Like everybody just wants to wind down after suffering through the Monday. Usually a quiet day. Thursday nights and Friday nights, Saturday nights are probably our busiest stream nights of late. Those seem to have a lot of activity. But I needed to get this built done because I know April submitted this order, I think, at the beginning of the month. I know we had our holiday, so we kind of lost a couple days there. So I'm trying to catch up. I gotta get it done. Gotta get it built. Yeah, let's just send it through here. And I know Peyton's super excited, so let's get that. We just sent through all of our cables. This is the 24 pin, the big one. Call it the 24 pin. It's what powers the entire motherboard. And then this one up here in the top corner, this is what we call an 8-pin EPS. This is what powers the CPU directly. So the CPU especially gets its own power. And then the other item that's super special is going to be the graphics card, which also has its own power cord separate. So we have the power cord here, but we don't have a graphics card. We do need to get that installed now. Our RX 580 AMD graphics card by XFX. Go ahead and get this unpackaged and installed. We've got a bunch of peels to peel. And then we're going to drop it into the socket here as soon as I open this thing up, because I'm the person that forgot to do that. That, there we go. And then you just make sure your PCI clip is down, ready to receive. Line up the PCIe pins into the socket. Sometimes it helps to actually look. And then you line it up, push it down, you'll hear it click in. Now we're ready to add 2 screws to the side here. No, you really can't see here. There's 2 screws here that we're going to add. And these screws come with your case. This is all hardware that's included with the case if it's brand new. A lot of people I see buy used cases and then they're like, oh, I don't have any screws. And it's because, well, you need the hardware that's included with the case. There we go. Now all we got to do is plug our power cord in, which is PCIe 8-pin. Plugged in. And we'll tuck some of that extra back in. And then we'll add 1 zip tie here finish cleaning up the inside. Make it look nice and pretty. Now what I'm going to do here is explain this on the video. Because a lot of times, especially new PC folks, people that are new to PC, will make this mistake. You'll see an HDMI port up here at the top. Let me give you a little bit of a zoom so you can see it. And hopefully it focuses. But you'll see an HDMI port up here. You're going to be plugging all your ports in, your USB items, your Ethernet, your Wi-Fi adapters, etc. But you're going to be very tempted to plug your monitor in here. Don't do it. This is onboard video, so we're not going to use that. We're going to use the HDMI and display ports down here on the graphics card. So make sure when you're plugging your monitor in or any additional screens that you plug in here. If you plug in up here, you're just going to get a blank screen. It's not going to work. The CPU is what we call, it doesn't have a APU on it, so it doesn't have onboard graphics. The motherboard supports onboard graphics, but the CPU doesn't. You won't get any graphics there, and if you plugged in there and ran it, if it was an APU, you wouldn't benefit from the performance of your graphics card unless you do some modifications. So always make sure you plug in your graphics card. I'm going to put this little blue tab in there just so you're aware. I put that in there, and that's just to keep you from making that mistake. All right, so now we're ready to flip this thing back over and deal with some cable management on the backside, and then we'll be ready to fire this thing up and see what it looks like for the very first time. Right? You super excited for this one, Peyton? Yes, it's my first PC. I'm going to be pulling all night with the boys. Oh boy. Tell your mother I'm sorry. At least it's summer, right? But tell your mother I am sorry in advance. It's actually funny that I said that because I've actually had a customer reach out to me after they purchased. I mean, like, this is 6 to 8 months after they purchased. Other reached out to me and was playing PC too much. This is more of a parenting thing. And he was not doing so good in school, not paying attention, up all night, etc. So it's always good to keep that in mind as the gamer, to make sure your priorities are in the right place. But she actually reached out and asked if I would take the PC back and give her a full refund because her boy was gaming too much. I'm like, that sounds more like a parenting thing. Like, you might need to limit that. Don't take refunds for that stuff. I think that's what it was a long time ago. Thought it was funny. It just made me laugh. Because, you know, for me to take it back, if I were to send any of the hardware back, which I wouldn't, I'd probably just, you know, flip it and resell it if we did take it back. But if we took any of the hardware back, then we would have to, you know, if we took the PC back, if I was truly, you know, sending it back, I'd have to send it back to the manufacturer, and that's well outside of the return window for me. So I'm losing out on it, basically. And also, the value of the PC changed over time. So in this case, when she bought it, the value of the PC was higher, but when she wanted to return it, it was less. So I would have lost out on it. You know, I'm a smaller company. I'm hurt. I try to make everybody happy, as much as I can. But couldn't do that one. I'm almost thinking about keeping this here as is. Bet. I would buy that PC. Hell yeah. I mean, this was a long time ago, too, when that happened. All right. Here we go. Last connection and cable bit of cable management here. And we are ready to fire it up. Get that plugged in. Actually going to need 2 more. Does anybody want to take a guess on how many zip ties I use in a year? Take a wild guess. How many zip ties, these zip ties that I'm using to tie up the cables, how many zip ties do I use in a full year of building? And you can look at my build count right there at the top of the screen from last year. This year we're down a little bit. The economy has not been that great. And these are, you know, luxury items. People don't have money or don't want to spend money on luxury items right now, it seems like. 1,136. Close. No, it's actually not even close. Higher than that. On average, I use about 15 to 20 zip ties per build. But last year we did a lot of big builds. The bigger the build, the more zip ties we use. So something like this, it's around 15-ish zip ties. But the bigger the build, the more zip tie you will use. So you want to put that down. Better for it. Here we go. 2,266, close. So last year I think we had around 30. I purchased 3,000 zip ties, and we have a little bit of leftover from last year still. So we had almost 3,000 zip ties used. It was a lot. 1,803. Nice. No, it was around 3,000 to 3,500 because I can't remember if I bought a second bag, but it's around 3,500, I'd say. Be the total zip ties in and out of here, which to me is crazy. A lot of zip ties. Oh yeah. Peyton, do you like the cable management here? Are you satisfied with that? Nice, clean cable management here? Man. Well, can't get much better than that. Regardless. But that's your cable management on the backside that we're sealing up. I'm fully confident in my builds. I'm gonna seal it up before I test it. Yes. Well, when you pay somebody to build it, I'm always a firm believer that it should be clean like that when you're paying somebody to do it. If it doesn't look like that when you're paying someone, then you're not paying the right person. That's how all of our builds go out. Nice and clean. Look at that. super clean, ready to go. We'll go ahead and clean up some of this hardware, and then we'll get this thing fired up, and I'll give you guys a side view of the PC standing up, fired up, running. And I'm going to leave the glass off because the light likes to reflect on the glass. So just a moment here, I'll get it plugged in, and then I'll give you guys a side view, and then Peyton, if you want to tell me when you are ready, push that power button and get ready. Please tell me. Does it have RGB? So here, let me give you a side view here. So the RGB on here, this CPU fan right here, this fan here is addressable RGB. The 3 fans on the front and the fan on the very back here, those are RGB LED, which means they're not adjustable. They just stay the same color / mode until you upgrade them. They are upgradable very easily. In fact, Thermalright has a really good kit of 3 for like 15 bucks for 3 fans, so you can replace all 3 in the front and the rear for like under 25 bucks. So, but they're basic fans that you start out with. They're great for about a year, and then you might want to look at upgrading them. And also when you get bigger hardware in there, you know, you might want to look at upgrading then. So let's adjust the focus, make sure it's not fuzzy there. All right, Peyton, are you ready to push this button? Let me know when you're ready. This guy is single-handedly keeping a zip-tied business alive. Yeah, I probably have, and I always do buy the same brand because they work. Not the cheap ones that just break. Okay, I have a question. Would you suggest Linux? Only if you're experienced with Linux. If you're planning on just doing some PC gaming and just enjoying it without having to deal with random things not working, then definitely just stay on Windows. But you could put a second drive in there and make this dual boot from Windows to Linux if you wanted to play with both. Or you could partition this drive and do Windows and Linux. That's the other thing you could do. But, all right, you ready? 3, 2, 1. I'm just kidding. Oh. I forgot to flip the switch on the back. All right, 3, 2, 1. And yes, this fan can be set to an RGB rainbow looking color, but when you first fire it up, it's going to be orange because that's the gigabyte color. I was thinking about that. Yes. And we've got a post, which is power on self test, POST. It just means that it's booted to the BIOS, so we know it's working. Ten out of 10 would eat. I don't. So funny you say that, because there's actual companies out there that have to put labels on the computer parts and other computer components and things that say do not eat, because they've received companies have received requests in their support asking them, hi, I really like the smell of your thermal paste, can I eat it? Is it safe to eat? And their support is just baffled because they have to respond to that. It's very funny, actually. But sad that that question has to be asked and that label has to be put on these things. RZ, hey, can a Ryzen 5 5600 work on that board? Yes. Yes, it can. You could definitely run a Ryzen 5 5600. You could run all the way up to a Ryzen 9 5950 if you wanted on this board. So all of the 5000 series, 4000 series, 3000 series, 2000 series, and first gen, I think, can also work on this board, but I would double check that. Well, there's no reason to go backwards. Is it safe to? Yeah, it's fine. I'm the reason because of that. Jeez. Is it safe to eat this? No, definitely not. Definitely. It's safe to put the Ryzen 5 5600X on here. Yes. To eat the computer, not safe. No. do not eat this. I'll have to have a conversation with your mom. Do I have to put a sticker on this for you? That says, do not ingest. Do not eat. I hope I don't have to. Frontal of the PC. And this will have a glass side panel here, so you'll be able to see on the inside. Not even the thermal paste, no. And thank you so much for having, been having problems with the processor. What's going on with your processor, RZ? RZ? Is it RZ on this board? I would just make sure if you have, I don't know what type of issues you're having on the board, but if it's not posting, and if maybe, let's say you had the scenario, which I'm assuming is what happened. You bought the Ryzen 5 5600X and the Gigabyte B450M DS3H Wi-Fi, brand new. You get them, you put the 5600X in while you're building the new PC, you fire it up for the first time, nothing but a black screen, right? What I could assume that happens is that when you purchase that B450 motherboard, it's possible it was shipped with an older BIOS version. That older BIOS version is what basically will tell the board if that CPU is supported or not. So if it's an older BIOS version, it's not going to recognize the CPU that's plugged in because it wasn't added to the support list on that board. So you might have to buy a cheap AMD like 3000 series, like a 3600, plug it in, do a BIOS update, return the 3600, and then put your 5600 back in there after the BIOS update, and it should post. That's what a lot of people do. They'll buy it on Amazon or Micro Center, plug it in, the 3600, get it to post, do the BIOS update, remove the 3600, put the 5600 back in, and then do the... But the other thing you could do is return the Gigabyte B450 and order either another B450 on Amazon or somewhere that's going to have a newer BIOS version like this one. This one out of the box should post with 5600, and that was from Amazon. Or you could go with a B550, which is definitely going to support the 5600X out of the box. No matter what. Good post. Excuse me. So the B550 would be an option, or ordering a Ryzen 5 3600 off of Amazon. I think they're about $80 right now. You could run that and do a BIOS update and then put your 5600X in there. But really, that's probably what the problem is the B450 that you have has an older version of the BIOS, and it won't allow the 5600X to post because it doesn't know the CPU until you do that BIOS update. Does that make sense? Dang. Well, this was the build tonight. We are all done with it. Next, I have to install Windows, do all the drivers, make sure the BIOS is up to date on this one as well, because we always do that before we send out any of our PCs. It has the latest BIOS and the XMP profile set, etc. There's other couple of tweaks that we might do. And then we go through a battle tested phase where we test the PC, its performance, make sure it's cooling where it should be, etc. And that we're satisfied with the performance and certified. then it's ready for pickup. So I should have it ready for pickup sometime tomorrow. Looks great. The RX 580, yes. It is the the XFX RX 580 by AMD. This guy, the GTS version. It's a great solid 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I've always liked that card. This one was super popular, is super popular still, I think. But it's always been a solid card. I've also liked, you know, the accent on these. This is back when like back plates were becoming normal as well. But the XFX logo on the side here also is in white, so it always went well with like a white build, like a nice accent to it. Had that card, yeah. This card is a great card. Still runs anything you want it. Throw at it, it'll run it. Got the peel. But alright guys, that is the build for the night. I am going to go ahead and get this one wrapped up so that Peyton can come pick it up. I know he's super excited to get it, so I'm going to call the stream here. I am looking forward to a couple of really cool streams coming up here probably in the next week or so. We should have more. I'm still working on some other content, so it's been really slow lately with orders, so the streams have been kind of off and on. But I have other content that I'm working on, and I'm super excited to get that rolled out and started and rolling out to you guys so everybody can watch and enjoy. But I hope everybody enjoyed the stream. Thank you everybody for hanging out, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their Monday, and I will see you guys on the next stream. Happy Monday. We'll see you guys on the next one. Yeah, no problem. I hope you enjoy the build.